Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot here today to give you all my review, my recap, highlighting all the big moments that we got from last night's special on HBO Max, which was the reunion of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. We got some great behind-the-scenes moments. We got a little bit of drama going on. We had a beautiful tribute to Uncle Phil, and just so many great moments in last night's special. And I'm so excited to break it down in this video. But before we dive into the details, as you can see on the screen now, make sure you're following me on all my other social media accounts. That way you all can stay up to date on what's going on over here at Movie Files. If you are new to this channel, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing to the channel, and while you're at it, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my other movie reviews, TV coverage, live streams, and all the fun things we do on this very channel. It would mean a lot to me if you all can share this video, give it a thumbs up. It helps out the channel, but I also really appreciate it. And in the comments, if this special meant a lot to you, if you enjoyed it just as much as I did, if you're a fan of this series, let's break it all down. What were some of your favorite moments from last night's special? What did this show mean to you as a whole? And let's just have a great time talking about the show in the comments below. So, man, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I've talked about it on live streams, like live Q&As. People ask me, what's your favorite sitcom? It depends on the day of the week, where it's a toss between the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Martin. Now, when it comes to Martin, I think it's probably the funnier show, but then when I look at the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and why I think I give it the slight edge, when I look at the characters, the stories, the cohesiveness of the story, I think it's a better written show for the character development compared to Martin's. But two great shows nonetheless, and two shows I grew up with, and two of my favorite shows. But I'm gonna give the edge to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and it meant so much to me growing up in the 90s, having a show to watch with my mom, who was a single mother raising me, and my grandmother as well. This is one of the few things that we sat down and watched this show, and it's something I remember, I always remember. And this show just it means so much to me. This show is just, again, just culturally speaking, Will Smith is one of my favorite actors of all time. So seeing him be able to come from, being a rapper, television, and become the megastar that he is, I mean, I can't speak highly enough about what the show means to me. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I just love the Fresh Prince. And I'm not a big reunion guy. Like, I appreciate it when I hear it, when, Josh Gad did the reunions for some of my favorite movies of all time. That was cool. I didn't really watch them, but it's like, hey, that's cool that they're getting back together. But this one was special because, again, it just means so much to me, just for on a personal level, that I had to watch it. And it was just, without getting too much into the details, and I'm going to break it all down in this video, but I thought this reunion special was not only insightful for us fans of the show, behind the scenes, learning some things, but it was emotional, it was impactful, it showed you the importance of Black excellence that they talked about in this show. And it was just such a wonderful hour and 15 minutes. You just kind of go back to that time machine, going back in time and just reliving those great moments. And it just makes me even happier to be a fan of the show. And I will be revisiting this show, as I did when HBO Max dropped. I watched some of my favorite episodes, and I just love this show to the core. And I'm so happy we had that reunion. And who knows, we might get another one in 10 years, as Will Smith says at the very end of this. But very happy as a fan what we got last night. But let me go over some things that kind of stood out to me, highlighting some of the big moments. Starting off with the lead, man, the Fresh Prince. As Will talked about it, he was a rapper. This was his first kind of big break on television, and he kind of highlighted something. They highlighted something that I didn't know about, which was him mimicking other people's lines. And I thought that was so fascinating, because if you follow Will Smith now on social media, you know that he strives for excellence, right? He talked about it in this special, where he's like the type of person he's always like 10 steps ahead. He's thinking about the future. He really doesn't get to like sit into the present. He's always thinking about what's the next big project. So just knowing him as a perfectionist, and him literally reading he read the entire script and knew other people's lines. And oh man, that moment, I never even noticed it. I revisited that episode with Don Chino, where you see him mouthing his lines, you see him mouthing other characters' lines. I thought that was just so fascinating. And one of the things that I definitely took away from this special was, again, even from everyday life people, whether it be me on YouTube, my everyday life at work, we all can see where we began. You see the meme on Twitter and Instagram, where it started to where it's at now, and just seeing where Will started as an actor to where he's at now is just such a fascinating thing. And again, something I took away from the special was just, there's a lot of motivational things in this, and things to aspire to be. So that was just, I found that to be very fascinating, him kind of mouthing other people's lines, which was really great. They highlighted the audition process, which I found to be very interesting, starting off with Carlton in his tracksuit. And just something else I kind of pulled away from that conversation, he didn't see that uniqueness about him as he was auditioning for this role, but luckily he had other talented people to kind of see that raw talent that he had in this character, Carlton. I really kind of appreciate that, because again, sometimes we don't see the greatness inside of us. Sometimes it takes other people to highlight the great things that we have to offer. So I really like that moment, hearing the story about how Hillary was just born to play this role. Same goes with Ashley, her uniqueness, the uniqueness of the role. And then the Will Smith story with Quincy Jones, how he had to audition in front of all the people that was going to greenlight the show, and just again taking something away from this special about sometimes you don't have moments to prepare for things, right? You got to just be in the moment. So knowing that he was like, oh, give me 2 weeks, I'll get an acting coach and all this stuff. And then Quincy Jones was like, well, the people in the room, they don't got 2 weeks, man. You got to blow them off. You got to, blow their socks off right now before we can get this show greenlit. So I really kind of love that moment where it's just like, live in the moment, believe in yourself, take that chance, take that risk. Sometimes you got to jump in the water head first before you put your feet in. So I kind of really love that moment. Again, a little tidbits that I really took away from this special. Some other things that they highlighted, which was one of my favorite aspects of the show, which was the dynamic between Will and his cousin Carlton. I love their comedy. I love their back and forth. I love how they talked about how the characters meant so much to each other after this 6-year run, how they changed each other's lives, in particularly in the show, as well as outside the show as well. But also, too, just where they came from in life, right? And just seeing that dynamic over the 6 seasons, I thought that was really kind of cool to kind of dive deep into. And then, of course, they talked about the Carlton dance, which I love doing that dance, and man, no one can do it better than Alfonso, and I just love that moment as well. And then kind of get into the meat and potatoes of the special that I really kind of took away from it, which was the experience of live television, right? We don't get that much in TV watching these days, especially with everything going on in the world. I don't know if we'll ever get a live audience for any show, but it just talked about how the characters were able to grow on the show, like Ashley, Tatyana, from 11 years old to 17 years old. She was able to grow as a person on the show. She had her first kiss on the show. And just speaking on the experience of how it was just an event. If you were there on that live recording, it was like going to the club. So I kind of love that atmosphere that they created and just the energy that they had creating this phenomenal show. Another thing that kind of stood out to me, which was the impact on the show, right? Going against Monday Night Football, how important it was for black people on television. Of course, there was, the Jeffersons, there was the Huxtables, the Cosby Show, Family Matters. There was, of course, other black families on television. But in regards to where this show stood in the 90s and how important it was to the culture, whether it be the fashion statements that it had, whether it be the subject matters that they carried and talked about in the show. I thought the show was just, for me, it was impactful, and it just showed you how the stuff that they talked about 30 years ago is still relevant today, which is unfortunate because there were some, episodes they had talking about, being pulled over by the police, gun violence and, just stereotypes and all that stuff. So the show just was almost beyond its time. But again, it's so crazy how we can still relate to certain things that happened 30 years ago, which I love that they highlighted within this show. And then they talked about something I always talk about in the show, and that is the importance of the Hollywood structure, where they refer to as, back in the day, there were white males talking about this black family. And it was so important for the black actors on the show, Will, James Avery, all the actors on the show. They gave them input on how black people would act in certain situations, right? How important it was, where it was just like they weren't a stereotype. They were able to tell the black experience. They were able to tell the black story and be authentic to the situation. So I really love that they were able to have their voice and their input on the show, which was predominantly written by white men and, ran by white men. So I kind of love that aspect. And again, fast forward in 30 years, we're still, working things out in Hollywood. We see that there's, people of color. We see that there's different cultures being able to tell their story, their authentic story. So there's still things to be worked on in Hollywood, but I love that they were able to kind of start that conversation where it's just like, hey, we can tell you how we're going to talk in this show. We could tell you how a black person will react in this situation. So I really kind of love that input that they had within being able to hear, have their voices being heard. Then this is the moment here where I just definitely, if you are an Uncle Phil fan, if Uncle Phil meant what he meant to you, like he meant to me, like I didn't grow up with a dad. So we'll talk about that father episode, which is my favorite episode of Fresh Prince. But, they talked about James Avery, how important he was to the show, how he was a master in his acting capabilities and his acting skills, but also how important he was to just life lessons, to giving life lessons to Tatyana at a young age. Will, of course, and everyone else attached to the show, how important he was, how impactful he was. I can't believe it's been 7 years that he's been gone, but man, Uncle Phil was my Uncle Phil, right? He was like a father figure to me on television. I just really appreciated appreciated what James Avery brought to the show. And I love that they spent like, I think it was close to like 10 minutes just talking about his importance to the show and what he meant to the show. And I just thought that was, again, I was just emotionally wrecked when that moment happened. And I love that the show, that the special took the time to kind of highlight him. And they actually, it was like a minute or so where they just kind of cried. They just kind of embraced that moment. And I really thought that was important. And again, rest in peace to James Avery, my Uncle Phil, the best father on television for me growing up. And man, that was just a powerful moment. So again, within that moment, they highlighted my favorite episode. Again, not growing up with a dad and having my dad. He came into my life when I was a teenager, and I'll never forget this. He came in, and maybe, you know, I went over there for the summertime, and then literally he just ghosted me. I didn't hear from my dad again. So when I see that episode, and it's something I go back to, man, like, why you don't want me, man? Like, that moment always gets me. I just kind of love that Will shares that story about James Avery telling him that he embraced him as an actor at that moment and all that stuff. It was just, again, that episode wrecks me every time I see it, but I just kind of love that moment. I talked about it up top, the drama. Janet Herbert, the OG Aunt Viv, and they kind of dove into that, behind the scenes, how she was banished from the show from Will at a young age of 21 years old. He said that he kind of felt it was him against the world. So whenever there was a little bit of drama, there's a little bit of things going on, he kind of shuns you out. And he said that he did that to Janet. And she kind of talked about her struggle, being a beautiful black woman in Hollywood. But once that word got out that she was difficult to work with, she no longer was able to work. And she was in an abusive relationship. She had her child, and all that stuff. So all that stuff, I didn't know anything about. I knew that there was drama, that why she was removed from the show, but I didn't know the details. Obviously, no one really knew, and this is Will's surprise in regards to details. So I thought that was really fascinating, and just really I'm glad that it's kind of water under the bridge now. They can kind of move forward, but just knowing that they didn't talk for 27 years and just all the stuff that went into that was wild. But shout out to Janet again, being able to, again, just grow from that. Same goes with Will, grow from that, accepting the apology that he gave, and just appreciating what they were able to share in the 3 seasons that she was on the show. So wrapping this thing up, man, 30 years later, what a show. Seeing that special last night just reminded me how much I love the show, why I love the show, why it's my favorite sitcom of all time. I'm excited to see what they do with this reboot. In a sense, we'll see what it does. But again, this show meant so much to me as a black kid watching this family in the where they were. Having Will being this person to kind of, relate to and kind of have moments and great moments with. Uncle Phil being a father figure to me. Carlton being such a funny character and having his story being told, because there's, that conversation in the black community. Oh, you're not black enough, or this, that, and the other. So what his character represented. Same goes with Hillary, being kind of this uppity, kind of bougie type of character. But, sometimes you need those type of characters, right? And she had an arc within the series. Same goes with Ashley, and all the wonderful characters that we got in this show. And I just want to take the time to, again, Will, James, Janet, Debris, Alfonso, Karyn, Tatyana, Joseph, Russ, those characters, Jazz, all those characters meant so much to me, and it was so great seeing them on screen. Again, I wish Uncle Phil was there on that special with them, but he was there in spirit with them. So again, that special meant so much to me. I enjoyed it from top to bottom. I cried, I laughed, I had such a great time watching. I'm going to probably rewatch it, and I'm definitely going to be watching some episodes of Fresh Prince, just kind of coming off this high momentum from that incredible special. So those are my thoughts. Again, let me know in the comments if you watched it, if you enjoyed it, if you cried, if you laughed, if you found it very fascinating. Let's discuss it in the comments below. And again, if you want to share your personal experience with the Fresh Prince, again, I share mine. Let me know what this show meant to you all. And let's just have a great time talking about this show, which displayed such great black excellence within the culture. So again, thank you all for watching this video. Make sure if you haven't already to like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell so you don't miss any of my other content. Hope you all are staying safe. Hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you on the next one.